Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Poison Ducky, and we're going to have another Total War Warhammer 2 replay. I'm going to be playing as the Lizardmen versus the mighty Greenskins. Now, let's get into this army introduction. I did bring a pretty powerful unit, and when you bring powerful units, you have to make some cuts in your army. So I'm going to have a front line of skinks with javelins. Not very powerful, not very, impactful, but the javelins themselves very useful when taking down large units like giants, any large unit charging into a skink cohort. So javelins are very powerful as a projectile, so that's why I don't usually bring normal skinks. In most cases, I think you should just bring skinks with javelins if you're going to bring skink cohorts in general. Now I'm going to have a secondary line of red-crested skinks. You need the armor piercing and poison damage because black orcs are kind of a problem. And red-crested skinks are a very good matchup into black orcs, although they will lose. That's no doubt about it. They trade well cost-effectively into this matchup. I'm going to have 2 units of Sacred Kroxigors, one on each flank. Like I said earlier, Black Orcs are an issue, and Sacred Kroxigors, while they are not as... I believe normal Kroxigors are much more cost-efficient versus Black Orcs. The Sacred Kroxigors can deal the damage with their little punching gloves to any sort of large unit, just in case like giants or anything like that, because giants are a huge matchup, a unit that's used in the Greenskin versus Lizardman matchup a lot, and giants in general. There's the projectile game of the Lizardmen are a little bit on the weak side, so you need units that can deal with the giants. So that's why I brought the 2 Kroxigors along with the spears of the Legion of Chakwa, which has a nice, very nice ability that makes it so that you can reduce missile damage by 44%. That's insane. So I keep them stuck with the Slan Mage of Life, kind of like how a lot of people use their Temple Guard in Group of the Map. And why do I need so much missile resistance and healing from the Lore of the Life? I think you guys have already seen it. It's the Feral Dread Saurian. I think the Greenskin matchup, this is a pretty good one, right? The Rusty Errors and a group of Orc Error Boys can do a number on this, but that's why you bring the Legion of Chakwa, you bring the armor piercing from the cohorts of Sotek and the Red Crested Skinks to deal with Black Orcs. You have the Salamander Hunting Pack. Now, Salamander Hunting Pack doesn't seem like it, but they deal a ludicrous amount of damage to infantry, especially light armored infantry, even though they're specifically made to say, like, oh, we're anti-large, right? It's because they buff the splash damage of this unit. So this unit can be flexed into a position of dealing anti-skirmishing as well. And along with the javelins, I think we have a pretty nice symmetrical core, with the exception of the Dread Saurian, of course. Now, my opponent, as the Greenskins, has a very interesting strategy indeed, as he's doing a strategy that I think I did rather recently with the Chaos faction, except in where I put different pieces of artillery on different sides of the map. Now, my opponent here is going to have 1 unit of Doomdiver Catapult, a unit of the Hammer of Gork, and another Doomdiver Catapult at the opposite corner of the map. Now, this will make me have to make a decision to either split my army or just full commit with my entire army onto one side. So that's an interesting play. It's not a play you see very often with Greenskin. Doomdiver Catapults are very dangerous, by the way. They're extremely dangerous ever since they buffed them. But they did have a slight cost nerf just recently. So yeah, Doomdiver Catapults pretty much always hit their targets. As long as they keep firing, they will get their value. Now, he's going to bring some Wolf Riders, one of them being the Moon Howlers, which have like some fear, but I'm not extremely afraid of Wolf Riders. They're just not very good as a unit. 20 stats, their charge bonus is very negligible. It's just, you're paying 300 for a unit that can take out skirmishers, except I really don't have any skirmishers. I don't have any blow dart skinks. So I suppose this could be a really good play if you expect them to bring a lot of enemies to bring a lot of projectiles, because these are essentially like hounds, right? But in this matchup, could have done better. I expect Spider Riders. Spider Riders are my go-to choice because they can hold everything down. A unit of Squig Herd, because Squig Herd are always fantastic, very cost-efficient, very high stats for their cost. The only problem is they have Rampage, and Greenskins have no real way of stopping that Rampage. And he's going to have some Orc Biggins, a Savage Orc Biggins along with 2 Orc Biggins. That's a good choice, actually, because a lot of the Lizardmen's line is just extremely large. We just have a lot of large units. The only problem with Orc Biggins and Savage Orc Biggins is they don't have armor piercing and they don't have charge defense, right? So in a pit fight, they'll do well, but in reality, when something has a lot of armor like a Kroxigor, the Orc Biggins won't be as cost efficient as you believe them would be. They would be. And he's going to bring the Crimson Killas, which is the Regiment of Renowned Black Orcs. Now that's a dangerous powerhouse. They can kill several units in each single hit. The most expensive infantry unit in the game, if you're not counting like Chosen with chevrons. And he's going to bring the mighty Black Orc himself, the best one of the bunch, Grimgor. Now they did buff Grimgor. He no longer gets staggered when hit by large targets very often, and I think Grimgor is actually like no longer awful. I think he's just below average now, which makes a pretty big difference. He does really well against large targets. He's almost kind of like a giant slayer, like, even though he's no Gotrek and Felix, right? But he's really good in versus large targets now, especially with the buff to his mass and deflection towards like being stumbled. And of course, that's back over here. Now my opponent did have a chevroned up nasty skulkers way out there. I actually disagree with this play. Because first of all, nasty skulkers are not very fast. They are, 37, and it'll take them way too long to get into the battlefield. And nasty skulkers should be used to protect Doom Diver catapults and any form of backline pressure, because they have the ability called Smoke Bomb. Now, Smoke Bomb is really useful because it slows down the charge. Let me see here. It slows down speed and charge speed. So it's a really great anti-large tool to muck people up and make sure you can get your Orc Biggins to actually make it to the battlefield. Now, at this point, I actually have seen this entire left portion of the army, or this portion of the army, and so far I've seen is this Doom Diver catapult. Now, when I crest this hill here, I'm going to see this Hammer of Gork, and I'm going to see the left Doom Diver catapult, and that's going to make me have to make a decision here. Do I split my army, try to take out all three, or do I try to take two, or do I just keep my army very centered, make a very powerful formation, and just push for one and go one at a time? And I make the decision to split my army into two. I'm going to have a right flank here and a left flank here going for these two artillery pieces. Now, unfortunately, that's going to allow one Doom Diver catapult to get a lot of value. But he is firing into Skinks, which is not the most important unit in the world to lose. And I see there's a lot of wolf. At quick glance, I was like, oh my god, there's a bunch of cavalry coming my way. It could be quite dangerous. And I see that there's Goblin Wolf Riders coming, but I didn't really second check. Like, these are Goblin Wolf Riders. I shouldn't have been too afraid. If there were Spider Riders or maybe even Boar Riders, that would have been quite a dangerous affair. But I'm going to turn around, get some spears into these. Look at that. I melted so many, and this Goblin Wolf Rider is going to be dealt with. He does have Goblin Big Bosses, so he's kind of got like a wolf core, which is a really interesting play, and it's a very thematic, which I find fun. But I'm going to be slowly pushing up. We're going to get some anti-large melting power into these Gobos. This is how you do it. Anti-large fireballs. It's just these Wolf Riders never stood a chance. And a banishment from my Slaane's Priest. So a lot of destruction for these poor Goblin Wolf Riders. So there goes a vast majority of their mobility, as all these Wolf Riders, they are just one shattered, routing. Just the only thing left are the Goblin Big Bosses. I did have a little bit of collateral damage, and the wall will pop off as they engage my front lines. I did get one unit of Skink cohort to deal with this Doom Diver catapult, and my cohort of Sotek are going to be dealing with some Orc Biggins. Now, not the greatest matchup, of course, but I'm having a little of a bunching here. I'm going to finally get the Dread Saurian here as I take out one of those, and I'm going to push him straight into the Crimson Killas. Now, this is a great matchup. You want my Sacred Kroxigors and my Feral Dread Saurian, because the Crimson Killas are like an anti-infantry killing machine. I am going to pop the Shield of the Old Ones to increase leadership and damage resistance, as it's very important that I win this sort of pit fight, because the wall is off. I'm in a rather good position here, and I need to deal with the high-value targets. Now, the Orc Biggins are here. Now, Orc Biggins are actually very powerful in this kind of against... So we've got like a circle of countering. Biggins counter Sacred Kroxigors. Sacred Kroxigors counter Crimson Killers. And, of course, the Feral Dread Saurian counters Crimson Killers. And my Legion of Chokwa will deal a rather decent amount of damage to Orc Biggins. So we've got a big mashup here of just everything countering each other, and it's a monster fest. Like, look at this. Like, oh, the Kroxigor literally just pushes into it, and it's just the Dread Saurian, man. Now, I'm going to use Shield of Thorns here to increase the physical resistance and the weapon damage of each of my units here. It's pretty important. It's really powerful, actually, in this sort of circumstance when you're being built. But my Slann Priest is just being bullied over and over again by this Doom Diver Catapult. But it is a Lore of Life Slann Priest, so I can always heal. It's not the worst, but the Lore of Life is just a really fantastic lore being added to the Lizardmen roster, especially with such large targets like the Feral Dread Saurian. Now, the Wolf Riders are going to make a resurgence Greenskin style, and I do a little bit of a micro area here as those little nasty skulkers all the way in the distance finally make it to the battlefield and make it into my Salamander hunting pack. He really caught me on surprise. So I'm going to, my Salamander hunting pack do run back, and I'm going to make sure they don't catch up to my Salamanders by using some Red Crested Skinks to hold them off, and hopefully my Salamanders make it back, which they do. And I'm going to use the Salamanders, since they're already all in the flank, I move them over. I'm going to deal with that unit of Doom Diver Catapults, if they would just come back. Over here, I'm going to have some pretty good engagements, just some nasty skulkers. Another wall did pop off, so wall is going to deal a lot of damage to my opponent, or myself, I should say. But another Shield of the Old One should negate most of that damage, and Grimgor Ironhide. Grimgor Ironhide is starting to duel the mighty Dread Saurian. Now, I don't believe he brought Gitsnick here, which is probably not the best choice. You definitely want to drink Gitsnick or some sort of amazing damage dealing. Now he's getting slapped away. Even though the buffs of the Dread Saurian, he still takes quite a amount of damage. Dread Saurian, just a monster. And the powerful Kroxigors with power fists, of course, dealing the damage they need. I think my opponent needs to bring a few more, maybe possibly some Orc Boar Boy Biggins. God, that's always a tongue twister to see. But he is going to bring Grimgor and actually try to fight my Lore of Life Slann Priest, and that's a really good choice. I'm going to try to get him out of there. And he actually dies really quickly. The amount of Doom Dive Catapult Fire plus just 2 hits with Grimgor is enough to take out my Lore of Life Slann Priest, which is unfortunate. But Dread Saurian can really deal the damage. We have Red Crested Skinks to apply poison. We got the Armored Sacred Kroxigors. It's too much power that the Greenskins really have to deal with. And I think my opponent should have brought some Orc Boar Boy Biggins, and especially the Rusty Arrows and some Arrow Fire. You need some arrows, because these Doom Diver Catapults, while dealing quite a amount of damage, let's see their kill count, 13, not very high, but a lot of damage being dealt. It's not accruing enough value. Especially the Hammer of Gork, look, 37 kills, and could have done so much better. You can see the little... But a decent amount of damage with Dread Saurian, but I was healing it the entire time with the Lore of Life. And he's going Rampage, but that's completely fine. A third wall comes off. It's not very often you get to see 3 walls in a row. And at this point, I believe we're just in cleanup duty. I do have a few Sacred Kroxigors versus these nasty Skulkers, which is a terrible matchup for the Kroxigors because, well, first of all, they're getting Rampage, so I can't control them. But nasty Skulkers are just a really great anti-large tool. My Salamanders finally make it to the battlefield to take out these Doom Diver Catapults. And at this point, it's just a pit fight. And Grimgor is actually dealing a lot of damage to the Dread Saurian. Grimgor himself taking a lot of damage, of course, but Dread Saurian has how much weapon damage? Well, let's look at the weapon damage of Grimgor. 540. Oh, he does have Gitsnick, but he activated Gitsnick. 540. That's a lot of damage. I do have the Legion of Chokwa to try to reduce the damage of the artillery, but I realize at this point it's only for arrows, right? But, you know, Grimgor, I think he's a below-average leader now. He's no longer terrible. He's just dealing... Oh, God, the Dread Saurian's just bugging out in his model. Nothing like killing a skink. And with that, it's going to be the end of the battle. Grimgor did better than I expected, but, you know, he had no missile tools. And the biggest weakness of the Lizardmen roster is essentially just missiles. So let's see how we could deal with this as the Greenskins. You can see in unit efficiency here, my Skinks did well for holding the line. Well, one of them got quite a few chevrons, 70 kills. But Red-Crested Skinks, Legion of Chwaka doing their job. Salamanders dealing with some cavalry at the beginning and dealing with the catapults at the end. 75 kills, especially from that banishment coming in. And the Feral Dread Saurian getting some, oh god, 110 kills here on the Sacred Coxagore. But yeah, he needed some missiles, and let's see how we would do that. First of all, custom battle. Versus the Lizardmen. If I was Greenskins, you know what? I'll go with the meme. I'll bring Grimgore Ironhide. I'll get Snick because, as you saw earlier, he's a really good Slann hunter. He hunts Slans rather well. He can kill as long as he's with his Black Orcs. He can kill Temple Guard with relative ease. And with the new buff to his mass and how he doesn't get toppled over nearly as often, he is not terrible. That's all I can say, guys. He's not terrible, right? Now, the Goblin Big Boss, I'm not too much of a fan. I definitely want a Night Goblin Shaman. And what the spells I want to get are none of them. And what you really want to get is the Wanjet. So he's a mana battery. He's extremely cheap. And you want to get the Lore of the Big Wob. Put him on a boar so he doesn't get cut out. And you probably want Foot of Gork. Where's Foot of Gork? Foot of Gork. Because the Lizardman roster is rather slow, and getting a Foot of Gork on Temple Guard is completely and utterly devastating. And you want an Here We Go. The rest of it, maybe a Brain Buster. Brain Buster is really good, actually. So after that, there's your magic. There's your leadership core with a little mana battery. Make sure the unit caps are on, because I don't want to make this too out of proportion. And I think the choices here in terms of front line, you really know that you're going to lose the front line engagement unless you bring up Black Orcs. So 2 units of Black Orcs here is pretty essential, but you need to have some foreign unit to hold like a pseudo front line for your units, right? So you need the 8-pick loonies. These are unbreakable, really fantastic. So really good unit, applies poison. It takes a long time to get past this armor. And I actually agree with my opponent's choice here. Orc Biggins, while they do lack the armor piercing, they are still in a long, prolonged combat. They will get the job done. And with what little funds we have left, I think just a few spears will do, and we need to bring some Nasty Skulkers. Like I said, I think 3 units of Nasty Skulkers should be good. Nasty Skulkers have the Smoke Bomb ability, and you just need that to stop the pushing forward of the enemy lines. It's just crucial. It's something you really can't ignore. Now, Missile Infantry. You need the Rusty Arrows, as the armor sundering is a little too good to pass up, especially when you combine it with the Orc Error Boys. I believe 5 Orc Error Boys? No. So you get the Rusty Errors, 3 units of Orc Error Boys, and we're almost out of funds. Let's see what else we can bring here. We should bring at least 1 unit of Forest Goblin Spider Riders. But remember, we do have a very strong infantry corps along with some infantry defenders. I'm surprised. I'm sure the funds are still enlarged. Yeah, I'm surprised I don't have as many funds, but I suppose I did buy 2 Black Orcs units because Black Orcs are just... Oof, that's a huge hitting force. And with 300, I really want to bring a Forest Goblin Spider Rider, but I don't think I'll be able to afford it. So to make sure I have a unit that can chase off units from the battlefield, I will bring 1 unit of Goblin Wolf Riders. Now, with the few funds I do have left, I think I'll try to upgrade my Nasty Skulkers or my Goblins. Maybe just 1 unit Nasty. If I have 30, I might as well... Yeah, maybe 1 unit of Nasty. And there you go. I think this is a pretty decent build. You're going to have a very weak part with the Goblins. They'll rout very quickly. But the Bork Biggins, along with the Black Orcs, will deal a huge amount of damage, especially the Black Orcs holding a very strong front line. And by chance that they break past the front line, you do have Nasty Skulkers in the back line. You'll have Grimgore fighting in the front lines, the Orc Shaman dealing a really decent amount of damage, especially with the Foot of Gork, and a unit to chase off the people after they rout. And this Archer Corps is going to be crucial with dealing any large units. Now, you could do a very different one and not bring Black Orcs and instead bring Giants, because remember I said earlier, Giants are actually quite powerful in this patch, especially for their cost. Where is that Giant? So bring an extra unit of goblins. Giants for 1,500. This is a value train for how powerful this unit can actually be. So there you go. You can do either one of the builds. I think they're both really effective against Lizardmen. But yeah, thanks guys for watching. Leave it, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.